In a world where you may find yourself underemployed or unemployed at the moment, remember there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. Have you ever heard of the term creative employment? Well, I sadly got to admit, ambitious vet, before this interview, I sadly had not. But today's guest, Ed Henkler, does a great job sharing tactfully how both the visually impaired and other disabilities within the veteran community can get a competitive edge inside of seeking meaningful and profitable employment. Stay tuned.
I was just happy to have a job. I was thrilled. I would never have said I had undervalued myself. I had said I was lucky, joined a great company. I had been there 6 weeks. My boss came to me and said, I want you to go interview in another area. And I looked at him. I said, what did I do wrong? 6 weeks, have I failed? You don't even want me here. He says, you don't belong here. This is ridiculous for you. I just wanted you to get into the company. So there's undervalued lesson number one.
Today's show is brought to you by Original Grain. Ambitious Vet, do you have a great story? Well, why not wear something that has one too? At Original Grain, they create handcrafted watches which feature sustainable, reclaimed, and repurposed materials that tell a story. Visit originalgrain.com to check out all their inventory. If you find anything that you like, make sure to take advantage of your Ambitious Vet 10% discount by entering coupon code AMV Network 10. Again, that's AMV Network 10 at checkout to make sure you get that 10% discount. Welcome to the Ambitious Vet Podcast. My name is Chris Hoffman. I am a Marine Corps combat veteran turned social entrepreneur. Here I dive into the trenches with today's most ambitious, goal-oriented, and growth-minded military veterans on the planet with one end goal in mind, and that is to empower you with the golden grenades needed to break through new levels of satisfaction, fulfillment, and success after stability is no longer a challenge to overcome. So ambitious vet, if you haven't already, buckle up. It's time to grow and advance in your life.
It's time to get into the trenches, dig into your purpose, and fire up your life's fulfillment. The Ambitious Vet Podcast starts now.
What's going on, Ambitious Vet? We're right back inside the trenches. Today we got Ed Henkler on the show. Ed is a Navy nuclear power veteran, member of the board of advisors of Ability Ascend, and founder of The Blind Guide. If you haven't heard of The Blind Guide yet, Ambitious Vet, it's focused on helping people thrive with vision loss. That starts with novel assistive technology to provide more independence for people who are blind, smart canes, haptic devices, and other accessible solutions. Ed and his team are also deeply involved with employment initiatives to address the 50 to 70% unemployment rate for people who are blind and those with other disabilities. Their solutions benefit veterans, people with disabilities, especially blindness, and other different intersectionalities. Lastly, Ed is most passionate in helping people who are blind or visually impaired restore their quality of life. Ed, man, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Chris. I think I'm going to use you as my announcer. That was perfect.
Hey, what's that boxer announcer? Let's get ready to rumble. You know?
Pull that microphone down.
Right. Well, man, it's an absolute honor to have you on the show, man. I'm excited to just bring awareness of your cause within the ambitious vet community, because it is something that's not necessarily forefront of a lot of our minds. And also just some creative employment strategies that I think you have been able to understand. So thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So first and foremost, what has had you been so passionate about pursuing solutions for the blind?
We probably need to get into my career history, but before we do that, back in the early 90s, my mom lost her sight to something called age-related macular degeneration. At the time, I would say I had never met anybody who was blind. I had no idea how to interact with somebody who was blind. And as an only kid with a dad who had died early, my wife and I decided we were going to do our best to try to take care of my mom. So she was down in Florida at the time. We lived in the Philly suburbs. She lost the eye one at a time, which is kind of an interesting thing. Nowadays, they can treat macular degeneration, but back then they couldn't. So when she first called, she still had one usable eye. So that was fine. Although you lose that sight in a week or two, it's pretty devastating, pretty sudden. The second I was 5 years later. And when that happened, we had her moved from Florida up to Pennsylvania 1 week later.
Mm.
And I think what I may do, because I do want to go back into the other part of the career history, is I'll just say her experiences and my involvement with them are the genesis of the passion that I have right now, but they tell only a piece of the story.
Yeah. Well, thank you for giving us the context because, me looking at you, you're not blind, but it's always great to hear, just like where that passion or purpose comes from before we start dissecting your experience. So thank you for giving us a hindsight of where that fire, that desire comes from. All right. So Ed, man, let's go ahead and dive into your life journey. We were talking about in a previous conversation that, yeah, man, I mean, there were points where you were just undervaluing yourself, right? And had an unexpected transition at the age of 52, which can be tough. So walk us through that time of your life and, how do us as ambitious vets undervalue ourselves and how do we get ahead of that?
And I'm going to start by saying, I think from people looking from the outside in at me, they would see somebody who's very successful, very confident, and never stumbled. Did well in high school. I went on to the Naval Academy. I was in one of the tough programs in the Navy. So just doing a great job all the way along. But I think the journey wasn't the same from the inside. And I start with that because it's easy to say, oh, well, I didn't have that same pedigree. I didn't do whatever. I think it applies to everybody. It just depends probably on your level of confidence. I know your recent podcast talked with the humble alpha. I thought that was a very interesting story. I don't know that I was the alpha. I was a successful person and I worked hard, but probably fairly meek. In fact, a lot of people I don't even think saw me going into the military. That's where I ended up. So I spent 10 years in the nuclear power Navy, did good things. I'd say I was average though. I wouldn't say that I was stunningly good, just nice record all the way along. I tended to pick hard things to do, and maybe there's a life lesson there too. So if I go back to high school, I loved music and I would have loved to go into music. I think I would have done very well, but it didn't seem like something hard. So instead I chose the Naval Academy. And I chose nuclear power. Really wanted to fly, but I couldn't see. So therefore I became a nuclear power guy. I will say, just as a caveat or an aside, I had 2400 vision in high school and into college, which means I couldn't see the top letter on the eye chart. So while I'm not blind and while I was correctable, I do have an element of me that knows on a temporary basis what it's like not to be able to see. Very different, obviously, than permanent blindness. So went into nuclear power. It was the elite field, and I was very average in an elite field. And then I left the Navy after 10 years, and I went up to Merck Pharmaceuticals. Same sort of thing, a difficult company, very elitist company, doing really great work. And I had good success there. Not amazing, just good success. But maybe if we get to that undervaluing story, and then I'll see if you want to go in a different direction at that point. But when I got out of the Navy, you could say I had just been selected for lieutenant commander, coming out of an elite field, nice college pedigree. I had my master's then. I was fearful that I wouldn't be hired by anyone. So in spite of having a nice pedigree, I didn't feel that way. I was just hoping anybody somewhere would want to hire Ed. So I got picked up by Merck, great company, but I was brought in as a band 9. So for Merck, that's the lowest salary level. My job when I showed up at Merck was to watch people putting product into packages to make sure that they did it right.
Wow.
I had gone from a nuclear power trained surface warfare officer to watching people put product in boxes on an assembly line. And I was earning more than in the Navy, so that's another whole story. But again, we don't serve for the money. We serve for the value and the passion and everything that brings. So I was just happy to have a job. I was thrilled. I would never have said I had undervalued myself. I had said I was lucky, joined a great company. I had been there 6 weeks. My boss came to me and said, I want you to go interview in another area. And I looked at him. I said, what did I do wrong? 6 weeks, have I failed? You don't even want me here. He says, you don't belong here. This is ridiculous for you. I just wanted you to get into the company. So there's undervalued lesson number one. I clearly could have gone in at a different level, but I settled for the lowest of the levels. They bumped me 2 levels pretty quickly, and then about a year and a half later, bumped me another 2 levels. So I'd gone from band 9 to band 5. At that point, I was a manager, but it was a nice role. The lesson I learned at that point is they brought in somebody with a pedigree almost identical to mine, except he had gone to West Point instead of the Naval Academy. They brought him in day one at the level that I had taken 3 years to reach. And that's when I sat back and said, wow, wait, did I do something wrong here? He went on to become a VP, if not a senior VP. And I ended up a director, which was a nice level. But I always say to myself, what might have happened if I had started where he did? It's unknowable. Perhaps I would have gone nowhere. Perhaps I did reach my top level, Peter Principle, whatever one you want to say. But I always felt like, wow, I'm starting from such a low level that kind of that presumed what I could rise to. So I just start with that. Anybody coming out of the military, and we'll come back to this, I think, in a second, but anybody coming out of the military has incredible skills. You've learned technical skills, you've learned leadership skills, you have to have. You've operated in undefined environments, and that's not just for a special warfare person, it's for somebody that's on a ship in the middle of the night trying to figure out what they're doing, even if they're doing administrative work. So it's undefined. You have responsibility that transcends anything our civilian counterparts would ever have at a similar time. You think about a captain of a ship, maybe late 30s, early 40s, who could actually start a world war. Obviously, we don't want that, but in their hands are the tools and the capability of doing that if the wrong things happen. It's not paralleled in a civilian organization. So that's step one, where you have amazing ability. Number two, people in the military just get things done. It's the nature of what you've learned to do. You're supervising people at an early age, and you're supervising them in difficult situations. And these are people that are just as young as you are. So you come out with amazing abilities. And I think too many of us, absolutely self-included, are just thankful somebody wants to hire us. It's the wrong approach. You shouldn't be cocky. I'm not suggesting the humble alpha was wrong in his approach, because he's not. But the idea is you're bringing a lot of value. Recognize that and help the employer recognize that. And I'll pause.
No, that's great. I mean, there's a lot of wisdom in that. And thank you for kind of wrapping it all up into encouraging the ambitious vet that's listening to this around, yeah, like we have abilities, we have technical skills, all that kind of stuff. Because that's what matters. We got to have that encouragement. We've got to have different perspective shifts, right? Like your story brings a different perspective than the humble alphas and all the other 100 or so episodes that we have before this, because it gives them your unique story. That an ambitious vet may be like, hey, I identify with Ed. So that is so powerful. So thank you for bringing your twist on your experience. So I would throw this back on you around, yeah, like when you were seeing people advance faster than you, because I experienced that. I'm sure an ambitious vet that may be listening to this right now may have experienced that, where people are advancing to the left or right side of them quicker, and they don't know why. What had you realize, like, what was your realization of like why they were doing that? It wasn't just because of West Point grad, I'm sure, maybe part of it, but what was that realization for you?
I think there's several things that you'd have to look at. In one case, I just think he advanced faster because he started at a much higher level. So somebody said his base level as manager, where's he going to go? My base level was the junior most salaried. He had something that I think is a bit of chance, but if you have any control over it as you take a job, he and I were both offered 2 jobs, and I got to choose first. I chose one, and I really didn't understand either one. I figured I could do both, but I didn't understand either one. I elected to work for a gentleman that I found seemed like he was going to be a great boss, and he was. But he never moved during the 4 years that I worked for him. He was a senior manager when I worked for him the whole time. The other person worked for a guy that went on to become a vice president at Merck. And he was a young guy. He was a young guy, also very nice, but just moving fast. If you can pick a boss who is moving up through the organization, and you do a good job, you're going to accelerate. So there's an element of chance there. Most people don't get to choose between two jobs as I did. But if you ever have an opportunity like that, choose the young person that's rising up. Not, it doesn't have to be young, but the person that's rising quickly through the organization, and then just kick butt, do an incredible job for them, make yourself invaluable. And if you've chosen wisely, they're going to bring you along. If you've chosen a narcissist, then maybe you're in trouble, but that's that's just life. So that's another thing. The lesson that I didn't learn until I was 52 was to network. And if you've never heard of networking, I was actually I was told about it the first day I showed up at Merck, and I didn't know what it meant. And I said, yeah, at lunch, I just want to eat my lunch. I don't want to be trying to kill myself. What a mistake. And it's actually, I don't, well, maybe it's worth telling the whole story now. But for your notes, keep in mind, I want to go back to another undervalued veteran, and that's Robin, who has Veterans Ascend. So just keep that for future reference. But age 52, two kids in college, Merck came to me and said, you can early retire. Or actually, they didn't really say you can. They said I would early retire. I like to be fair to the company. I think it was an incredible company. I had a great 21-year run there. I was managing the research capital plan. It was $1 billion a year plan. And then because of biopharma fortunes or misfortunes, it dropped to 125 million a year. The company didn't really want me to leave. They gave me 5 months to find a new job, and I couldn't do it. And I think in part because I didn't have a network. Now, we were merging with another company, tens of thousands of people were let go. So it wasn't just about me. But I think with the network that I have now, I think I'd still be at Merck. I don't know that it'd be a better outcome, but it would have been better financially. But I think I still could have been there, but I didn't understand networking. When I left Merck, I didn't know what to do. I had a lot of people that liked me, but I didn't know how to sell myself. I had never helped them. And there's another lesson in here. Every chance you get, not just networking, but make sure that you're helping others. Networking, really the whole theme behind networking is to help others. It's not to help yourself. Some of the best advice I got on that was if you do a terrific job with networking, you're going to finish that introductory hour-long conversation and the person's going to say, that was fantastic, but we haven't even talked about you. I don't even know what you do. And then you say, well, let's get together again. But it's about the other person. You want to focus outwardly initially. Having done that, if I had done that, it would have left so many more opportunities. The people that I saw advance quickly in Merck, to your original question, and advance quickly outside, had this network. They knew what the next job was going to be. They knew what the next 2 or 3 jobs were going to be. They knew the next company they wanted to go to. I think I was more in a military mindset there. Now, I know some of my classmates went on to become one step short of CNO. So I had some people who were politicians and very capable people. They were mapping everything out. But most people I knew in the military felt if I really do my job well, I'm going to advance. I'm going to advance automatically. And that's how, to me, the military works. It's not about time and service. It's about doing your job well and checking the blocks as you go along. It's not like that in the civilian world. You have to sell yourself, and you have to be comfortable doing that. So the idea of working really hard and good things will happen, it's not necessarily true. You do need to work really hard, but you also need to be playing the politics. You need to be networking. You need to be connecting with people. You need to be helping others. You need to be looking at introductions you can make, anything you do to create more and more value around yourself. So it doesn't happen passively, and every 2 years you don't get promoted to the next level. It's not about taking a test. It's about people seeing you, liking you, and wanting you to get ahead because they think that you'll be an asset to them and to the company.
Yeah, no, that's great. And thank you for all of that perspective as far as just going down memory lane. I mean, 21 years you said with that company?
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. I mean, I hear a lot of stories, not many that have stayed with a company that long out of transitioning out of the uniform. So good on you for not going through 5, 6, 10 different jobs and staying the course. But to your point, I think it does come down to that military mindset where we're just loyal to the mission. We don't want to let people down. And it's more of a collective type type feel, right? Yeah. So I want to go ahead and shift gears, Ed. From what I understand, you guys are focusing more on the visually impaired, and to be honest, theoretically, I think that applies to ambitious vets as well, right? As far as are you having vision loss, right? And why I say theoretically is because I think ambitious vets can be in the trenches in their everyday life and be struggling with unemployment or underemployment and desperately looking for the next step to ignite their passion, hence vision loss. So, what are some practical ways to discover our passion and find ourselves making a living doing what we love, man? How do we do that?
So, two different things you can do there. The first, and it's the question, if I'm coaching somebody, it's always one of my first questions. If I hand you $1 million, you can't hold on to it. You have to give it away to an organization or organizations. Who would you give it to? For most people, that's a very hard question. It seems like a simple one, but it isn't. When I was asked that question while I was at Merck, my answer was, oh, I'm my passion, what I'm good at is strategic planning, or it's working with senior leadership. Those aren't passions. If I had $1 million, I'm not giving it to the Strategic Planning Institute. Now, maybe there's one person out there with a PhD in strategic planning that would. It's not most of us. It was a skill I had. Wasn't a passion.
Hmm.
By the time I reached 55, another one of my pivot points, I still didn't know what my passion was. I still could not have answered the question, at least the right way. And what happened to me, it took somebody else. And I think that's going to be true for almost everyone. I don't think most of us are self-aware enough. You need a spouse, you need a friend, you need a sibling, whatever it may be to help you. But what happened in the course of about 2 weeks, and this was 3 years into a job search, is I came home one day and I said to my wife, I've had 3 different people now in the span of a week or two tell me that I'm always interesting. They love talking to me. I have a lot of energy. But when I talk about prevention of blindness and enabling technology, I just come alive. They said it's so viscerally different when you do that. And I went home to my wife and I said, I think the universe is yelling at me if I just listen. And I changed my pitch. Up until then, I had been saying I want to get into a biopharma company and do strategic planning. Now you can roll that back 25 years to I'm getting out of the military, and I really like X, whatever X might be. So I want to find a company that is purpose-driven where I can do project management, whatever it may be. I had been doing that skills-based, here's what I want to do. And at that 3-year point, I almost instantaneously switched to I'm passionate about prevention of blindness and enabling technology for the blind. Within a week, I was introduced to a startup by the University of Pennsylvania that was developing something that 8 years later still doesn't exist. It was beaconless indoor navigation. So if you're blind and you're outside, GPS takes care of you. You can get almost anywhere, and sometimes with your app, you might get there faster than somebody that's sighted. When you get to the building, you can't find the door, and when you go inside, the only way to navigate that building, unless they happen to have beacons and Wi-Fi set up, is to grab somebody's elbow. So you want to talk about disempowering. I can be a world traveler, and I get inside a building and I need to grab somebody's arm because I can't do anything. So we were developing technology that would change that. So once I switched my pitch to something that was passion driven, everybody was trying to help me. They knew what I wanted to do and they got it. Nobody knew what I did at Merck. The people at Merck did, but anybody else is like, yeah, you work at Merck and don't you do something in research? That was what they had. I gave them something they could grab onto, and they understood why, because my mom lost her sight. This was not some random story I came up with. It was absolutely a game-changing event for her. And for my wife and I, it changed our lives too, because we were suddenly supporting a parent much earlier in her life than we thought we would be. If you can come up with that passion, and if you can work in your passion, life doesn't get any better than that. But I will say, I thought it was great advice from another colleague. The person said, it's great if you can work in your passion. Most people can't. But work at a job where you can earn enough that you can support your passion. And then it's still going to work about the same way, because when you're thinking about, can I put in that extra couple hours tonight? Well, if it's to support your passion, of course you can. So um, I don't, maybe I'll just continue the stream a little bit, because you had also talked about the creative employment, which is a big feature within my site.
So before we dive into that, though, I mean, one thing I want to bring up is just that, right? Because there's a lot of ambitious vets that think that maybe out of the uniform for at least 3 years, right? Realize that immediate transitional tools do expire, right? They have a shelf life, and they're in a job that maybe like I was. Oh man, when was I working door-to-door sales for a contracting company for AT&T? It was back in, like, I want to say 2015, 2016, maybe even, where I was out, man, I was waking up at 10 a.m., working till 7 p.m., knocking on 125 doors a day, right? And I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. They were painting a picture of, like, I could run an office, find people just getting out of college to help them develop sales skills and yada, yada, yada. But, right then and there, that was not my passion, right? And the hours didn't give me any free time to even discover that. I was exhausted. I was lucky if I even made it to the gym outside those hours. I was on my feet for that many times. So that's a great example of that ambitious vet, to where find a job that maybe you got to wake up a little bit earlier. Maybe it's 6 a.m. Get into the office, get done by 3:30. Gives you time to go run to the gym, pump that iron, and then go find time to write your book, or start a podcast, connect with Ed and figure out how he can empower you around your passion for maybe vision impaired and other disabilities and stuff like that. So ambitious vet, just make sure that you know that you can create your life, which I think we're powerfully set up for creative employment, which I got to tell you, those 2 blogs that you sent me, Ed, I went to law firm, I shared them with my spouse, and they were incredible. So the numbers that you were showing was 1 out of 25 people in the world are visually impaired, and another 14% are fully blind, which is crazy. So how can vision impaired ambitious vets leverage creative employment and that benefit of that? What is creative employment?
So I'm going to give 2 bits of advice before I go into that, because it relates to what you just said. One is, you talked about all the hours you're putting in. Now, if you're an hourly worker, you may not be able to do this, but if you have any other type of job, I think you need to carve 5 to 10% out of your day in network. And I don't think any aspect of your job is going to suffer from it. I think we all have the time. So it's not about working 55 hours instead of 50. It's about still working 50 or 60 or whatever it is you're committed to. It's not doing more, it's reallocating some time. I think you owe it to yourself, and I think that you will actually help your employer. I had a challenge at Merck. I had 2 challenges. One was to benchmark the capital planning processes we have. Now, I'm going to tell you, nobody in a large company is going to talk to you about how they plan their capital. It's proprietary information, and I'm interested in doing it. The other thing is, my boss always said, we need to bring superstars into Merck. And I'd say, well, how can I do that? The only people I know are in Merck. So I'm already here. Networking changes that whole thing. Now you get to know people that can talk to you about capital planning. In my case, obviously, it's whatever applies to you. And you're going to find those superstars. You're bringing them in. So you're not cheating your company, and you're actually cheating yourself if you view it that way. So carve out that time for yourself, but you'll help your company and yourself. The other is always be seeking your next job. We don't live in a world anymore where people are going to work 20, 30, 40 years for a company. Sometimes people do, but generally that's just not available anymore. And I think it's okay. I think it's actually, it means that we're dependent on each other, not on a company. And what is Merck? Merck is a business entity. I'm not trying to pick on them. As I said, I think they're a great company, but they're a business arrangement. It's the friends that I had there, the colleagues that I worked with, that I trusted. That's my network. And that network goes across companies. So you always want to be thinking about, where do I want to go next? Not that you're doing disservice to your current job, but there's going to be a next step. Actively and aggressively look for it. So that gets me to creative employment. And it's more for somebody that is out of work, or somebody that's at a job that they don't like at all. And it's my own term that I put up. I don't think there's a trademark there, but what I said is, if I'm not going to find a job that I can work at all my life, I need to put together what they sometimes call a gig economy type of job. And that is the idea I'm going to do multiple things. I still am going to go back and say, don't do more hours than you already planned to do. There's a quality of life aspect. There's a family life aspect. There are all those things. But whatever internally you're willing to put in, those are your hours. Don't put more in, but seek opportunities to work in your passion. So maybe you're doing exactly what you were doing. You're doing that door-to-door sales, which is somewhere between mind-numbing and everything else. But while you're doing it, you're networking with the people you meet. And if you meet somebody that's doing something, maybe you even seek your passion. And maybe you just wear a jacket that says Habitat for Humanity because you want to build humanity. Or you have a pin that says Blinded Veterans, whatever it is. Put it there in a subtle way so that that person says, hey, what, are you involved in Habitat? I thought that was pretty cool. Let that conversation go there, build that. And maybe that person is the president of the board of the local Habitat. And they're going to say, hey, would you want to join the board, or would you just want to volunteer with us? So always be looking for that type of opportunity. So don't work at one job. If you only work at one job, your compensation is always going to be 0 or 100. There's no in between. If you get involved in several different things, it doesn't all have to be paid, but just things that are going on. And then as your employment cycle goes up and down, you can switch in and out of other things, and it'll drive you more and more towards your passion. I'm going to throw out one job site because I think it's a wonderful site and it's free. It's called On Ramps, on the hyphen symbol ramps. And it's creative for-profit and nonprofit societal jobs, societal benefiting jobs. So, and I think particularly for millennials, I think it's a generation that is much more passion and service driven than my generation was. This is a lot of veteran opportunities there. There's something called the Mission Continues that's about transitioning veterans. Wonderful opportunities. It's free to sign up. And I think it'll help you uncover your passion. Because as you're looking at the opportunities they come, you'll see something and say, wow, that's pretty cool. Well, it's pretty cool because it's my passion. The other piece of creative employment is and this is particularly important if you're unemployed completely right now, is find ways to do business development for companies and friends that are doing things you believe in. Because if you go into an employee, let's do networking. If you go in and I'm Chris Hoffman, I want to meet with you. Can we sit down and network? That person's going to know you're unemployed. And no matter how you phrase it, they know you're looking for a job. And most people want to run away. I don't have any jobs. In fact, sometimes they'll start with that and say, Chris, happy to meet with you. I don't have any jobs. Well, I wasn't looking for a job. Well, no, you are looking for a job. I looked at your LinkedIn profile. It says you're out of work. So whenever you go in selling Chris, selling Ed, selling whatever your ambitious vet name is, you're in trouble because that person doesn't want to talk to you and they're actually afraid of you. So what you, not in a literal sense, but what you want to do, and for me, it's about organizations developing technology or services for the blind. And then when I go into somebody and they say, boy, we're trying to hire somebody. In fact, our company really believes in people with disabilities, but we're having a hard time finding people. How would you like somebody who's blind? Oh, no, I couldn't do that. I wouldn't even know what to do. I know an organization that can help you get past that, what they do. And now suddenly you're talking about something that solves one of their problems. They still know you're looking for work, but you've shifted that whole dialogue. So another piece of it is this whole business development for others. And then there's one final thing. You've got to swallow your pride on this, but if you're looking for work, swallow away. It's silly to let your pride get in the way. One thing you may want to do is just go in and say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about whatever challenges you have. And you know what? I'll come in for a week and I'll help you with it. And if you're willing to pay me a little bit as a consultant, that's great. But even if you aren't, I want to do it. I believe in what your company is doing. I believe if you see me, you're going to see what I can bring to you on a larger scale. So yeah, you want to be compensated. It's only fair you should be compensated. A lot of job coaches are going to say, don't ever not be compensated. But the bottom line is you're sitting there unemployed. And you can either not worry about it, or you can stand there and say, got to pay me or I'm not coming in. Well, I think it's a mistake. Do what you need to do. Volunteer with them on a project. maybe you don't help them at company. And back to the habitat example, maybe that person you're talking to has their own habitat jacket on and say, hey, I've always wanted to learn about habitat. Do you do any projects? Oh yeah, we got one this weekend. Can I sign up? How do I get there? So now you're helping that person with one of their projects. So
Yeah.
get in front of them.
Yeah. No, I like that. I mean, I think there was a couple times, even whenever I got out of the uniform, where I was still trying to find myself. Like to your point, a couple minutes earlier in the show, is I think that self-awareness is something that we can ongoingly deepen through just practice, experiencing, and finding things, work, and just different life experiences that light us up. But even getting into different events, like you said, that you're passionate about. And one of the key things I found that I was passionate about was personal and professional development. And I just fell in love with that, and being inside of an organization that I could be around other people that valued that. And then when I realized, like, being, to your point, networking with those people, was that, people that are always looking to improve, they're always employed. You know what I mean? So they're either managers, they're either executives of companies and stuff like that. And which, to your point, as long as we get good at nurturing those kind of relationships, and finding ways to connect them, listening to them, asking great questions, you stay top of mind with those kind of people, right? And I'm not saying that ambitious vet, go run and join a personal and professional development company, but find something that you value. If it's playing the guitar, go to meetup.com and join a meetup.com club. One of those clubs on that site. Just get yourself out there, start sharing yourself. So that's great stuff. Ed, is there anything else you would add to that, man?
No, I think good. You encapsulated it well. I take that back. The whole idea behind creative employment, the reason I put creative there is no one right path. It's all those things I said, and it's something I haven't even mentioned because I'm not aware of it. Just always be looking for opportunities to make somebody else see you as somebody they have to employ. Not because they have to, but because they want to. Because why would I not have a guy like this on my team?
Yeah. So, no, that's great. That's good stuff, Ed. Thank you for that. So, ambitious vets, we're going to take a real quick break to thank our sponsors. We'll be right back inside the trenches with Ed Henkler. Hey, ambitious vet. I just want to drop in here and say thank you for listening to the show. We don't thank you enough. You're the one that consistently shows up. You're the one that consistently listens. And hopefully, you're the one that consistently implements every golden grenade that you get week by week. I just want to give a quick shout out to a review on iTunes from Blu-ray Dad back in April 2nd of 2018 that said, I've been following Chris on social media for a while, but now with these podcasts, I can engage with this post at any time. There are times when I feel just too tired or unmotivated, but listening to the podcast gets me going again. Thanks, Chris. And Blu-ray Dad, I just want to throw this back over to you. Thank you for continuing to listen to the show. And ambitious vet, if you're listening to this right now, make sure to go and rate and review this show. It's what gives me life. It's what gives us life in becoming more inside the trenches. Now back to the show. All right, ambitious vet, we're right back inside the trenches with Ed Henkler. He is founder of The Blind Guide, and over inside this show, he's been diving into key golden grenades that are just going to empower you to not have vision loss, even if you are visually disabled or not, but how to uncover in the trenches when you're feeling underemployed, or maybe you're unemployed during these times, and how to create creative employment solutions for you to continue to scale up your life. Ed, man, I'm excited for you to kind of bring this whole show together with your 3 golden grenades. What would be 3 golden grenades that you could bring into an ambitious vet that may be listening to this? That's, hey, I've been out for 3 years, realized that transitional tools just have a shelf life. I'm unsatisfied. I'm unfulfilled. What would you tell that veteran?
We're going to start with the one that we've spent a lot of time on, and then I think the other 2 are new. But the first one I'm going to toss out, if you can toss grenades out, is to uncover your passion. Figure out what it is. What is it that you would do for free if you didn't have to pay bills? I have a friend that says that nobody would work for free. But let's say you won the lottery, but you're not ready to not be working. What is it you would do for free? And it has to, I'm doing it for free right now. I'm trying to support people thriving with vision loss. You don't have to work in that, but once you understand that, everything you do then starts coming back to that point. So I take my Merck example. If I'm working at Merck because I care so much about prevention of blindness, I'm going to find out how to work in the area that's developing novel drugs for somebody who's trying to keep their sight. It gives you purpose and it helps you understand what you want to do. When you're in the military, everybody has purpose. So you know what you're doing. It's keeping your ship afloat, it's keeping the lights on in the ship, it's fighting a common enemy, whatever it may be. You know what it is. No, you don't have to discover it. Once you get out, and I think you've talked about this on some of your other podcasts, that's gone. And it doesn't mean you can't find it somewhere else, but it's no longer being handed to you. You have to figure out what it is. So you discover your passion. And I'm going to say you probably can't discover it on your own. So leverage those around you who love and like you to help you figure out what it is. And it may take time, and it will evolve with time. So that's step one. Step two, and it's going to be very intentionally worded, is to choose to thrive. We all have that option. I'm involved with a lot of people with disabilities. And and it's not just people who are blind. In fact, disabilities have a lot of common themes in terms of unemployment, in terms of needing a caregiver, a lot of things like that. I also work with a lot of challenged athletes. I work with Paralympians. I shouldn't say I work with them. I know them. These are people that have crossed the most unimaginable of events, and they've chosen to thrive. We all can choose that. And you don't need a disability. You don't need to have been wounded or anything else. You can be sitting there depressed in your house because I loved it in the Navy, in the Army, the Air Force, whatever you were doing. There's nothing left now. Well, that's not true. There's always something left, but that's a choice. It's a conscious choice to thrive. And I need to give one example there. Some of the ambitious vets may know this name. There's a gentleman named Brad Snyder. He was a Naval Academy grad, and he was over in Afghanistan. He was a demolitions expert, and he had cleared the path for his squad to go through. And then this was 2011, I think, he cleared the path. Somebody from his squad ran off the path, stepped on an IED, got blown up. Brad followed him to try to help him and stepped on an IED himself. So he had already done the right thing. He had cleared the path, and now he's laying on the ground. The way he tells the story, he said, initially, I thought I had died. Everything was black, and I felt no pain. And I just thought I was heaven, hell, wherever you go when this is all done. He said, and then I started feeling incredible pain. So I realized I hadn't died, but I still couldn't see. And I don't know the specific diagnosis. Maybe his optic nerve was severed. I know you can have brain injuries that cause your sight to be gone. He now has 2 prosthetic eyes, so he has 0 vision. So he went from a sighted, very physically fit person in 1 second or a microsecond to somebody who would never see again. 1 year to the day after he lost his sight, he won swimming gold at the London Paralympics, and he set world records for swimming. Now, he was the swim team captain at Navy. I'm not suggesting that he went from somebody that was afraid of the water to somebody who set world records, but he was not a world record setter at the academy. He was just a swimmer. He was a captain of the team. He chose to thrive. It wasn't acceptable to him that his life has just ended and he would never do anything. Years later, he's now won, I think, 5 gold medals. He's married. Not an easy thing sometimes when you're blind to find somebody that wants to marry you. And he's about to start his PhD at one of the Ivy Leagues. All of that was a choice. And we all have that choice to make. So don't let the world choose for you. Choose to thrive. There's no other logical choice to me. The third thing is always stay positive. And that's sort of tied into it, but I'm saying it for a different reason. Friends of mine say, Ed, you've always been positive. Even though your transition was pretty rocky, you had a lot of things that didn't go the way you hoped, you're always positive. How do you fake that? I said, I'm not faking it. I really feel positive. I said, I won't tell you that I never have a day that I'm not on top of things. We all do. I think you're lying if you say you've never had a down day. but they're few and far between for me. I'm an optimist. I believe things are going to work. And even if you don't believe that, you can't fake being positive. So you never know when that person's going to come along and say, hey, Chris, got a great job for you. You're going, yeah, what is it? What do you see me doing? Because that person's going to sense that down attitude and they're gone. They don't want any part of you at that point. You just have to stay up. You have to stay up as much as you can. And I guarantee you, whoever, whether it's a spouse, a friend, a parent, your child, they don't want to see you down. You just drag them down. And in fact, you know what? They'll be patient for you a little while and then they're going to be really tired of it. Choose to be positive, choose to thrive, and figure out what your passion is.
Yeah, and always stay positive. That's great. That's some great wisdom. So, Ambitious Vet, if you just leverage one of those golden grenades in the next week, I promise you, your satisfaction, your fulfillment in life will go up. Ed, where can people go find out more about what you're doing with the Blind Guide and everything else you're doing?
So my website is called theblindguide.com. The three words, THEBLINDGUIDE.com. You can learn a lot about thriving and other things. I do a weekly post on there. I have email series that you can sign up for as a job candidate or as an employer if you happen to already be working for a great company. And the two sections I probably drive you to, one is Hire the Blind Guide. That's either as a candidate or as an employer. The other that I drive you to more, though, is called Employment Partners. And if we have the time, I'd like to tell you about one of them. You can read about all of them, but is there time to maybe quickly tell one more story?
Please, bring it.
So this is another undervaluing story, and I think it's really important to hear it. The woman that created Veterans Ascend, one of my 4 employment partners, spent 9 years in the Navy on the cyber and data security side. And when she got ready to get out, the recruiter that was helping her with her resume said, well, you can be an administrative assistant. And she said, I don't have anything against admins. It's an important role, but I spent 9 years in a technical career in the Navy. I was managing people at times. My ceiling is an admin. And they said, we don't really understand what you did. And yeah, that's probably what you ought to aim for. Well, Robin went on, she got her bachelor's, she got a master's, she got involved in corporate HR and really had some pretty good careers there. But it was always in the back of her mind that this is just wrong. Why is the world undervaluing somebody with the skills I had and so many other veterans when they get out? She's created something called Veterans Ascend. And what it does is she takes the military job skills, she translates them to civilian skills. And others have done that. It's not unique. Then she goes to employers, and I'm helping her find these employers, and says, what open positions do you have? She takes the job skills from the open positions. She takes the job skills of the veterans in her database, puts them through a matching algorithm, and comes back to the employer and says, here are 10 skills matched candidates. And also part of her process is to look at the compensation and the geography, the location, make sure that those are matches also. So she hands that employer blinded profiles, but of a perfect skills match, comp match, and location match person. At that point, if the employer wants to open up the profile, they can choose to do it. I don't know if you know the term implicit bias, but that's a pretty big deal, certainly in hiring people. Implicit bias is we as humans tend to like people that look like ourselves. And we can say that's right or wrong, but it's human nature, and it's actually animal nature. We gravitate towards people that look like us. Not saying that's a great thing. I'm just saying it is. So if I won't pick categories, but I'll just say if I want that person to look like me, and then I unlock that profile and find out, well, they don't look like me at all. It's a different gender. Maybe it's a different sexual preference, a different skin color. Most of the time, the implicit bias kicks in. It's like, I don't want to hire them. But I think with Robin's process, now you need to say, man, I love that candidate. Do I really now not love them just because their skin color is different? I would hope the answer is that most of the time you won't. It's not going to eliminate it, but it makes it better. She charges nothing else. So it's a very low annual fee for these employers. It's free for the job candidates. So I would encourage you to go to my site, see the link, and go sign up with her. and you become eligible for these jobs. And you're eligible for jobs with companies that already have indicated a preference in hiring veterans. The good news is she has now added veteran spouses as of the end of August. And for any veteran, man, you had a spouse that followed you all over the world. It's time for that spouse to have a chance. And military spouses too, who may still be following. By the end of the year, she'll add people with disabilities. And next year, she's hoping to add recent graduates. So that particularly gets in the millennials that are underemployed right now, first responders, and ex-felons. So now, if you want, and you self-select, you could elect that I'm a veteran with disabilities. And you know what? I was incarcerated too. Now, I'm not saying you have to. You have to choose whether or not you want to do it. But for a company that is open to hiring from that demographic, you're now in a database saying, I'm all three of this. So, hey, you want me? I'm here. It's a free system, and I think it's great. And it really opens up opportunities. You'll like the others that are on there also, but I wanted to highlight her, not only because she was undervalued and ignored them and went on to have a great career, but because it's an incredible resource for every one of your ambitious vets out there.
That's great. Yeah, Ambitious Vet. I've personally virtually met Robin at a Veteran Chamber of Commerce meeting. So she is fierily passionate about what she does. So I definitely can endorse Robin as well, just based on what she's doing. Ed, man, it's been absolutely amazing. Thank you for what you're doing for the blind guide, man, as far as visually impaired, the blind out there. Ambitious Vet, if you know of an ambitious vet that's dealing with visual impairment, or you want to be an advocate of what Ed and his team are building, right? Go check out their website. If it aligns with your mission, reach out, figure out how you can get involved, because, hey, right now, this is the time where you can pivot and find that passion. Ed, thanks for joining the show, man.
My pleasure. Can I close with one final thing, which is connect to me on LinkedIn. Please feel free. I will help anyone with introductions and advice.
Perfect. Ambitious Vet, I'll add that in the show notes below. That being said, we're signing out.
The Ambitious Vet is available on all popular podcast platforms. Go to vettrainingcoaching.com to subscribe, rate, and share with fellow vets.
Again, thanks to Original Grain for today's show. Veteran co-founded company that has a mission to create unique timepieces that seamlessly integrate natural hardwood and stainless steel. Today now, after partnering up with some of the top sports franchises, including becoming the official timekeeper for Wrigley Field in 2017, to making limited edition collection pieces for the Boston Red Sox, New York Yankees, and Golden State Warriors. Ambitious Vet, I encourage you to go and check out what they're best known for. Their craftsmanship that goes into each timepiece and the stories that can be told about the materials used. If you're ready to wear something with meaning, Ambitious Vet, go and check out originalgrain.com. Don't forget, if you find any premium timepiece that you like, that you're looking to get yourself, or maybe just hint your special someone to get that to you for Christmas, make sure to get your Ambitious Vet 10% discount by entering coupon code AMVNetwork10. Again, that's AMVNetwork10 to get your 10% off discount.